The motor's together, the frame is there, it's done, it's time. We put them together. Actually, the first thing to do is I had to, here, let me show you. I had to blast off all these bolts here, the engine bolts, all of them. Rust, corrosion, yeah, they're gross. Gave them a quick blast off with a wire wheel, made short work of it. A little Dremel to get down into the threads on the bolt. Only annoying thing with that is any zinc coating on there, we've definitely removed. Of course, what good was it really doing anyway? Obviously, it wasn't a very good coating. So whenever we put these back in, absolutely blast them down with grease. Make it much harder for them to corrode, as well as just make it hard for water to penetrate and get down there in the first place. When we took it out, for instance, remember we pulled it out the side, banged a few things here and there, no big deal, and we knew we were gonna be powder coating the frame. But now everything's all good. We really don't want to scratch things up. So the easiest thing to do, we'll lay the engine on its side, and then we'll put a block or two under it to stand it up a little bit, and then we'll take the entire frame and sit it over top. And we get some wood, some blankets and towels, and we'll set all that up. Just thought of something. I've kind of done this the wrong way. It may be able to go in that way, but that's not the way it came out, so. That's actually the correct, yes. Motor, big, obnoxious, heavy, frame, I mean, also kind of heavy and awkward to work with, but not nearly as much. And gonna give me so much control. You remember a few videos ago when I said that T-Rex forgot to put spacers back here? Yeah, I apologize to T-Rex. Apparently I was on crack. You didn't forget anything. In fact, I just rechecked the PDF. It's just this bolt, no washers, just this. So we're gonna put this on now. I have absolutely slammed this thing with grease, but I'm not gonna fully tighten it yet. But this grease, more than we really need. But the thinking will be that this should help seal this up, and I'm sure I'll have a big blob of it squish out. Won't go 100% tight yet. Plenty of sealant in there. For these ones right here, there's a spacer that goes in the middle, and obviously there's a bunch of other stuff because these are the big bolts that hold the cage on as well. For right now, I'm just gonna put them in, you'd call it kind of dry. Correct that once we set the bike up. I just can't put the cage on it with it on the ground, obviously. See, the motor is still kind of loose in there because we don't have it fully bolted up, but I can go ahead and tip it up now. As I tip it up though, I'm gonna grab the bottom of the head, almost work more from the motor than the frame. Get it like that, and there we go. Oh, and that's it, guys. That's how you do it. I don't know why I'm talking with an accent like that. That's the no drama way of putting in a frame and a motor and a frame together, and you can relax and do it easy. How many of you have struggled doing that before? That's super simple. Back straight, knees up. So we put these bolts in sort of temporarily. I've removed the nut on this one and I've pulled this bolt out completely. What we need to do now is actually insert all the little spacers, these crash cages. I got these recoated at WeCoat It while I was down there. So I'm gonna coat this whole bolt up, just end to end with some of that grease. I'm gonna put a fairly thick coat on here because like I said, I really do want it to kind of clump up in there and really try to stop water from getting down in there. I gotta get one of these spacers in here. That's a pretty pattern. I've got all the motor mounts in except for the rear one here. We're gonna save that one until after we have the rear shock in, because I have to swing that shock reservoir around. It sits right here next to the engine. Also real quick, why I mention that, because this gets brought up all the time. Yes, that's where it's meant to sit. That bracket holds it next to the engine. I always get people say it's gonna get too hot there. And I always try to remind people the factory ones on most bikes sit above the exhaust. They're full of nitrogen. The heat doesn't bother them. It's meant to sit here. Anyway, I'm gonna wait till I get those brackets in here. It's not going anywhere, the motor's fine. And wiped off all the excess grease. Every one of these bolts we tied it up, got a nice squish of grease out, which tells me hopefully we've kind of filled all the air voids with grease now. So we should be in good shape. I mean, I can tell you this, like the FZ07, I've pulled that swing arm axle out a few times now, like when we were converting the bike. And the original time when I pulled it out, like from the first time, it was a little stiff like they normally are. Light corrosion, clean it off, grease the heck out of it. More grease than you think you need, right? You stick it back in, and then it's been on several of these trips where it's just mud and water. That thing's literally been underwater several times, and then you go to take it back out, I literally unscrew the bolt and can just push it with my finger and it comes right back out. So it's very, very good to grease those shank areas on those bolts just to protect them. Next thing on the agenda here is I'm gonna start putting the swing arm linkage and shock on the rear. Similar to the motor mount bolts, I had to go through these and hit them with the wire wheel, clean them all off. Start with this linkage. I take a little screwdriver here and literally just like put a bunch of grease down in this hole. Hopefully this will also let me install this a little easier. As gentle as we can. I need to sort of switch gears, but still in line with what I'm doing. I need to get the swing arm all set up. First thing I'm gonna do when it's mostly neck is I'm gonna get the new seals and bearings in the end here. There's a lip in here, right? And so this seal seems like it needs to bottom out against that. A little grease on this guy, swab a little grease into here. You always want to push bearings in from the race that they sit against. In other words, like this bearing makes contact with the outside here, so we want to push it from that side. We don't want to push it in the middle. That would stress the bearing. Obviously, if it was reversed, if we were going onto a shaft, we'd want something that was on the smaller race to push it down. But to make things easier, I've put those bearings like a day or two ago in the freezer. They've been in the freezer in the house. And what I'm going to do here in just a second, I'm going to heat this up with a heat gun a little bit, and we'll try to warm it up. Sometimes like on raw aluminum swing arms, I'll just use a torch just for a couple seconds, but powder coat on here, we'll do it like that. I'll go ahead and put a little waft of grease. Oh my God, this is my grease applier, which is just like a random screwdriver. Throw a little bit of grease on here right now because once this is nice and hot, I'm not gonna want to do that. And then once the bearings are in there and everything's sort of settled, I'll actually go in there and push a bunch of grease into it. But yep, got that going. And we're just gonna warm it up for a minute. This grease might get a little more melty after we do this for a few minutes. Basically what we're trying to do is expand this metal just a little bit and shrink the metal of the other bearing just a little bit. If all goes well, we'll put it in there and it'll just kind of, it'll tap in very, very easily. And my wife's seen me do stuff like this enough now, she doesn't question it anymore. You know, like the first few times you start putting stuff like this in the freezer, she's like, what are you doing? And then now she's just like, I know what you're doing. This has actually got like a big space around, so I'm pretty good for just doing this. There we go. Spins nicely. I'll let this kind of like cool before I grease that up in just a second. It's got a pretty good little cage going around. That's why I was okay with just beating this directly immediately with the thing. So let's do this again. We got kind of quickly here. Sometimes you get a difference in noise and sometimes it just kind of stops. And it seems like it's sort of stopped there, but we are below the recess, and the main point here is that we can get this on and we're good. We're just gonna pookie up the finger. Just get it pookie, it's fine. You can wash your hands. Push that into the cage there. What I'm trying to do is just force this grease into these rollers here. That's plenty, there's so much grease in here, it's not really gonna matter. I know one time I had a video where I was greasing up these bolts like this, and someone had said you don't want to do that because now you're going to make it pivot on the shank area of the bolt instead of on the actual bearing. And no, once this is clamped down and there's a load on it, I highly doubt that. Again, sneak this back in here. There's a possibility with the powder coat could be a little more snug than before, but actually not bad. Greased up as well. Here. Oh, it's get to be a little bit of an operation, but it's not that bad. Oh yeah. All right, just put you right there. Pinch tight in here with the powder coat. There's some progress there for you. Everything's greasy and I'm tired.
Is that clock right? Batteries must have died on my clock. Best clock ever.
The real time is that.
In the morning.
So I need to get to bed and put a battery in this on my way in. I think I need seeing the different colors coming on there. It's gonna be crazy once the plastics come on and we put the graphics and the wheels. It's like, the next video, as well as video that is already out on Patreon, so you sure get in there. Check that out. And of course, if you do join the Patreon, be sure to link your Discord to Patreon so you can come and chat with us in there. Great old time. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching. Give me a like, please. Please give me a like. It does help. Like, subscribe, do those things. Come on, people. Come on, you know the drill. All right, later.